Well, our storm watch coverage continues. Amanda Weldon along with you. All eyes on Hurricane Irma, and right now wind speed sustained around that 175-kilometer mark. Currently at a Cat 2, but a strong Category 2. Keep in mind only 3 more kilometers per hour, and it would still be in that Category 3 range. And as it barrels its way through the west coast of Florida, it's interesting to see the amount of moisture and how much it ties up all the way into Atlantic Canada, where we have some rainfall warnings currently in place. But we'll take you back down because we're going to take you exactly to Sarasota, where we have Chris Sinclair and Mark Robinson down there right now. Chris, windy conditions I can see, and hurricane conditions are stretching 130 kilometers from the eye. What are you seeing right now in Sarasota?
Well, in Sarasota, it's windy now. There's rain.
All right, Chris. Well, so glad to see you're staying safe down there. We'll catch up with Chris and Mark later in through the hour. And as he said, storm surge, a huge part of this problem. And look at that threat. 3 to 4.5 meters is possible in through areas like Naples, and where we have our storm hunters, 3 meters possible. And another huge thing to keep your eyes on is the way that the waves will be fluctuating. Well, definitely could not the best time to be out towards the immediate coast. That's where we're going to see the biggest area of influence. And then after the surge, well, comes the rain for sure. Interesting, 2 points to look at here. Definitely where the eye is traveling up the coast, north-northwest, around 22 kilometers per hour. But look at that, a second point up near Jacksonville. And that's all tied to the boundary that we're seeing in through Atlantic Canada. So extra added rainfall throughout Tuesday, definitely possible. And we also have our eyes on Jose. Did you see that? The way that it curls back around? Well, when you think it's gone, it could come back, and we will continue to track Jose, as it is still currently a strong Category 3 hurricane in the Atlantic Basin. And of course, the tie to Atlantic Canada. Your Canadian forecast is coming up next, along with more details on Hurricane Irma. Stay with us. Watch coverage continues, and all eyes are on Hurricane Irma. Currently a strong Category 2 moving up the west coast of Florida. We've already seen it hit Cujo Key, Marco Island, and of course the low-lying Keys. And as we see this move, impressive the size and amount of moisture associated with this system, stretching all the way up through this boundary. Now, not exactly what Irma is, but this boundary connected reaches all the way up to Atlantic Canada. Now we're going to take you back down to Florida, Sarasota specifically, because we have Chris Sinclair and Mark Robinson down there. Chris, I see that the winds are high right now. They're only going to get worse. As you said, it's going to get worse before it gets better. What's the game plan for tonight?
We'll show you what's going on over the course of the night if you'll stay with us, Amanda.
Well, we'll sure stay with you, as long as you stay with us, Chris. Okay, then one of the main problems here will be the surge. Storm surge, definitely a problem, and it's almost like oceanic flooding into the cities. As you can see, the town of Naples, 4.5 meters is possible, and some of these areas so low-lying. The city of Miami, only 2 meters above sea level. So with storm surge, definitely going to be a problem also post-Irma. And the waves, as you can see, dangerous heights along with the surge. Rain will be a problem. 2 areas of interest. The way that Irma has been moving, we are really seeing deep pockets of rain, Cape Coral as well as Naples. But the second area in through Jacksonville, all tied into that boundary that we're seeing up through Atlantic Canada. And hey, we're also focusing in on Hurricane Jose, currently at a strong Category 3, and the way that this one's going to move is interesting, curling on back. That's what most of the models have been saying, but we will see more about that later in through our week. And your storm coverage continues, following your local forecast wherever you are. Stay with us. So great to have you along with us. Well, our eyes are certainly stateside, and we're focusing in on Cujo Key as well as Marco Island. Both have seen landfall of Hurricane Irma as it barrels its way down the west coast of Florida. Now, it has since weakened, but still that does not discount that factors like hurricane force winds and everything else that comes along with it are tracking with Irma as it moves. Now, we're also focusing in on those winds. And I want you to note this asterisk here in Key West. To the point where these winds were so strong, they actually broke an instrument used to measure winds. And so we have in Sarasota our very own storm hunter, Mark Robinson. And Mark, I see you out there in those winds, and it's not exactly always the wind that's the danger, but what's in the winds. What are you experiencing right now?
Right now, I just want you to, how fast do you think they're going right now? Amanda, tell me, quick.
I'm going to say 80 kilometers per hour. Gus, winds?
Okay. I have my instrument right here. We're gonna check it out, okay? So right now I've got there. Let's see what we got. Let's see. There. Okay. There we go. 41 kilometers an hour. It's actually very funny how often people will double the wind speed. So you actually got exactly what I thought you'd say. Here we go. So, whoa, that was a little more.
All right, Mark,
so
I have a quick question
right now.
for you.
That's going to increase as we get into. Yes, quick.
What is the fastest winds you've seen in a hurricane in your life as a storm hunter? Wow.
Miles an hour.
Well, that is impressive, Mark. We are going to come back to you two as you're in the field in Sarasota and really getting that first-person experiencing. Well, the second part of this will definitely be the rains. Take a look at those two areas. Definitely where Hurricane Irma is tracking up the coast, but you see that one area towards Jacksonville? That's all tying into a boundary that we have up near Atlantic Canada. The track expected, well, we're expecting it to downgrade past Georgia, and that will currently definitely be on our radar. We'll talk about the storm surge potential when we come back. We have people in the field in Sarasota. You're not going to want to miss it. First-hand experience. Stay with us. Tracking the strongest hurricane in Atlantic history outside of the Gulf and Caribbean. Of course, we have all eyes on Hurricane Irma as it tracks up the west coast of Florida. Amanda Weldon along with you. And here are your hurricane warnings. Widespread and moving all the way into the bordering states. And to add insult to injury, we have some tornado warnings as well. Well, we have Mark Robinson outside in Sarasota, storm hunter. Mark, talking about these tornado warnings, we always talk about a tornado howl. But how does a hurricane sound? We often say the roar of a hurricane. And hard to imagine, Mark, that the winds are sustained at 175 kilometers per hour at the outer wall. And what you're seeing there with Mark outside, it was around the 40 to 60 mark here in Sarasota. And the flooding potential post Hurricane Irma is definitely real. We definitely saw that with Hurricane Harvey as it moved, and downpours of rain along with storm surge add into the potential to see. And let's talk about that storm surge, because the possibility to get over 3 meters in areas like Naples and Sarasota, even where Mark and Chris Sinclair are, 3 meters. It is absolutely threatening to any structures and life that is still here. That's why, of course, we have evacuations in place. We're going to continue to track the way that Irma moves and downgrades. We have seen it downgrade over the last little bit. And the tide, well, it's certainly high. And continuing to talk about this and continuing to catch up with Chris Sinclair and Mark Robinson when we come back. Inside those gusty winds. And well, we did have earlier in through Sunday, meteorologist and storm hunter Mark Robinson as well as Chris Sinclair down in Sarasota. It was drastic the way that the conditions changed. And taking a look at Hurricane Irma as it moves up the west coast, the first hit in the Keys was Cujo Key, and then it continues to move up the west coast, packing quite a punch. That's the last 3 hours. Taking a look at the gusts in through Naples, 130 kilometers per hour, 135 kilometers per hour. That's sustained wind, so gusts are even higher. And notice this, in through Key West, an asterisk. Well, that's because the instrument used to measure wind was actually damaged so badly by this hurricane. The track of Irma up through the states expected to make a curve to the east, but that will all be more defined within the next few days. The one thing we do know for sure is that as it moves over land, it takes off its intensity, right? We can see it lower in category, and the rainfall heavy right at the core where it currently is sitting and continues to move up through the coast all the way up to Sarasota. And then this in through Jacksonville, a boundary really connected there all the way up to Atlantic Canada. Interesting the way that everything is tied in here and through the Atlantic Basin. And of course, we also still are tracking Jose. Did you see that? The way that it came around? We'll take a look at the track in just a moment, but still a pretty strong Category 3 hurricane in through the Atlantic Basin, expected to take a turn. These are all models, and you can see them curl around and maybe make a second landfall in through the Caribbean. But still undefined the way that Jose will move, and that will all depend on what's going on in the Atlantic Basin. We do have the Gulf Stream there, and that's just pumping up the moisture into Atlantic Canada. But this high pressure system that's coming off of Canada to the east, that's going to help steer Jose. And there it is. Currently, it's over top of Ontario and Quebec, and it's all thanks for that beautiful weather that we've been experiencing. And there's Jose moving around. That Gulf Stream really bringing up some subtropical conditions for Atlantic Canada, and that actually adds into this stream. And the Avalon in a rainfall warning. This added moisture, you could see 50 to 75 millimeters of rain additional in through the rest of your week. We've already seen some fall, so it's actually 40 millimeters additional for the Avalon. But that high pressure system we talked about keeping Ontario and Quebec nice and dry, seasonal conditions, and we're actually going to pump up in that heat. Well, coming up after your local forecast, well, our weather story continues, and it continues in storm watch as we take our eyes stateside. Of course, we're talking about Hurricane Irma as it has made landfall in through Florida, continues to track up the west coast. And the biggest threat here for sure right now will be that storm surge. Look at these numbers. Could get up to 4.5 meters in storm surge in through Naples. And when you have low-lying areas like this, not great to have storm surge coming up. And then an additional threat, the rainfall to follow. For sure will be flooding widespread throughout the state. The state in a state of emergency, of course, and the track of Irma is expected to be up the state and then curving around to the east. Now, debatable whether we will see it in through Ontario and Quebec's forecast as it moves, but the definite thing is it will weaken. Now, we are seeing a tie-in with the Atlantic provinces, a boundary in place. It's stretching all the way from the Atlantic down into where we are seeing Irma take place right now. Added moisture, subtropical moisture, means additional rainfall for the Avalon, particularly through Wednesday. Now, this is additional onto what we've already seen, 40 to 60 millimeters. And again, as well, 40 millimeters expected extra for parts of Cape Breton as well. Totally different story in Ontario. Dry, a southerly flow taking place. We are going to heat up in those temperatures. The 7-day forecast is beautiful and really nothing else to report. And low pressure stateside moving across, creating instability. High pressure up to the north coming down, bringing those temperatures down, and instability throughout the week. You will be getting more rain in through the prairies and cooler temperatures. And speaking of cooler temperatures, well, look at this. Yeah, the first snowfall in through the Rockies. We're seeing it in through Lake Louise, Jasper, and Banff, and as well as Springbank. You could definitely see some flurries even through city areas like Calgary and Edmonton. Those temperatures coming down and just very close to that area. High amounts of rain in through the North Shores, 75 to 100 millimeters possible. And we are seeing that rain come in through the coast because of a low pressure system tracking in through. Now, we've been talking hurricanes all night long. Let's talk about the top 5 hurricanes and tropical storms that we have seen in through Canada now. 3 million customers without power. We are taking a look at Florida and the way that Hurricane Irma has been having its way with the west coast as it moves. First made landfall in the Keys. Cujo Key was the first hit, and the peak winds are impressive. 135 kilometer per hour sustained winds in through Fort Myers. And the way that this damage could have its way with Florida, the way it moves up and then curves around, flooding ensues after. And I actually want to show you what we're already seeing outside, some of the flooding that we have. And the worry is always not exactly what those gusts are, but what's in those gusts. Taking inanimate objects and turning them into projectiles is definitely a problem. Flooding rains is what we expect throughout the next few days as Irma passes, along with Irma as it moves. And the deep pockets are really on the west coast, Sarasota down to Naples and southern areas as well. Jacksonville included in this, tying into a boundary that we actually have in through Atlantic Canada. Now, taking a look in through the Atlantic Basin even further, we still have Jose, and the track is still very undefined. These are a few different models. We have the European model, Canadian model, US model, and they all tie into this, taking their data and trying to track out how the storm will move, adding in all different features. Of course, high pressure tracking off of Canada, and that's going to help steer it. We also have the Gulf Stream, and these are all playing factors. Now, continuing into this, you see Jose moving around, adds subtropical moisture up into Atlantic Canada, could even hit the Caribbean again, but that will be completely made a bit more clear in the days to come as all these factors really play out. And that's even a look into Wednesday, later into our week. Well, let's take a look at our side of the border. Again, that boundary that we were talking about tied into Irma affecting Atlantic Canada, it's going to really add to the rainfall totals for places like Sydney, as well as the Avalon. Burgeo getting a little bit of that as well. We have a rainfall warning for the Avalon. Could expect 50 to 75 millimeters once this is all done. And for Ontario and Quebec, totally different story. High pressure. We've been seeing seasonal temperatures, and soon we will see above seasonal temperatures with this. A warm southerly flow will really play into our temperature story. Well, cooling pattern though in the prairies, where we have seen the sizzling heat through the summer. That cold front passes by. It is a weak one though, so you'll see that in your local forecast that's coming up next. Well, our weather story continues, and take a look at this. Yeah, all eyes are on Hurricane Irma, and you can really spot the eye there. Such a strong storm. So our coverage here continues. Well, I'll take you to the first landing site where we saw Irma in Florida anyways. We've definitely seen it through the Caribbean, Barbuda, Anguilla, as well as Cuba. But Cujo Key was the first area for Florida at a Category 4. Moves up, makes its second landfall in Florida as a Category 3 on Marco Island, and continues to track up the coast. One of the main threats here will be flooding as the days go by. Deep pockets of moisture with Irma, and of course, you've seen the satellite version of Irma, right? Storm larger than the state. And it's absolutely awe-striking, really, when you see it, and tracks up the west coast connected to the Atlantic provinces. And that means added moisture for the Atlantic, and the track still undefined for Irma. But what we do know is it will track up through the states. When hurricanes go over land, they don't like that, and it will continue to take down its intensity, but still packing quite a punch. Now look at this, tying into that moisture. But before we take it up to Canada, I want to show you some visuals from outside. You can see a current already formed with the amount of water in the city. 5.5 million people living there, super similar to Toronto. And high pressure off of the coast is pumping up all of that moisture. Boundary in place, low pressure has been formed and will continue to bring the rain for the Avalon, as well as places like Sydney, Cape Breton, and gusty winds along with that low pressure system as it moves throughout the rest of your days until Tuesday, where it will ease off a little bit. Taking you to Ontario, where the easing has been the story for the last little bit. In the next 7 days, can't wait for you to see your 7-day forecast. That's in a minute 20. Cold front sliding through northwestern Ontario, though. Some instability here. We could see some showers, and then building into our week, cloud cover will start to be the story by Tuesday, Wednesday, especially for the southwestern corner. Taking a look at the prairies, well, it's been hot and clear in through the prairies. This story is totally going to change. When we have energy coming over the Rockies, as well as this low pressure system stateside, that's going to bring some instability for Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Rain will be a part of your story in your 7-day forecast. And I have some great news if you love skiing, because snow is on its way, and all those winter activities are as well. And we could see our first snowfall for Thursday. Jasper, Lake Louise, Banff, Springbank, all getting into the snow possibility. And interesting about this, now I know it's only September and it seems weird to talk about snow, but not uncommon for cities like Calgary and Edmonton to get a bit of a sprinkle with this as well. Taking a look at BC, we are getting quite a bit of rain for the North Shores, and that will continue to be part of your story. A rainfall warning in place. And to the south, totally different story. No measurable precipitation at all. This is where you can find me, but coming up after your local forecast, Stormwatch and our weather story continues. We're going to talk through all of the developing headlines here at the Weather Network, and we're looking our side of the border, but as well, of course, stateside, as we take you to a closer look about the dangerous storm, Hurricane Irma, that continues to batter its way through the west coast of Florida. 300 million plus customers without energy, without power right now. A huge element coming into play for safety, storm surge. And we can even get it up to 4.5 meters in through Naples. And look at that, Naples also into this. Flooding rains on the way. 2 areas of interest down to the south as well as to the north on the border there. Jacksonville, all tied into a boundary that we're seeing in through Atlantic Canada. The track of Irma will help to take off the strength of Irma as it goes overland. Now, this is the boundary I was just talking about, tied into that subtropical moisture, extra added rainfall for the Avalon, and we're even seeing it for Sydney as well in through your week. Totally different story for Ontario as well as Quebec. Southerly flow, the high pressure in place, is going to bring us some higher temperatures. Cooler temperatures easing its way in for the prairies. You're going to get into the teens. But with all eyes on Irma, we always talk about what are the most dangerous elements. Here's science behind the weather to explain more. Pretty calm conditions our side of the border, except on the flanks we are seeing some rain, but our eyes are certainly going stateside because our coverage for Hurricane Irma start now. Hurricane Irma made landfall over the Keys at Cujo Key as a Category 4, slowing down to a Category 3 at Marco Island, and continues to track up the north coast. Now, a huge problem here will be the rainfall. Heavy and deep amounts of rainfall, two areas of interest for sure where that eye is, and continues to track up the west coast. But the second will be the outer bands as well as tied into the boundary moving into Canada. And Jacksonville, you have quite a lot of rain on the way. Let's take you outside to a look at Naples. And flooding for sure a problem. You never want to drive through these conditions. Mass evacuations taking place. Take a look at this. How interesting is the fact that Irma's moisture is tied up into Atlantic Canada? Well, the track of Irma we'll discuss now. It continues to move in through inland and taking a sharp turn, but that will all be worked out over the next few days. Let's take it back to that boundary, working its way up to the Avalon. This boundary is so strong that it's actually making a low pressure system. And we have a rainfall warning in effect for the Avalon, and gusty conditions ensue as well as this low pressure system works its way onto the coast. Gusts we can really see just in between Nova Scotia as well as the Avalon throughout the beginning of your week. So it's going to be a windy one to start your week, easing off on Tuesday though. And now taking you to probably the most boring forecast in through Canada. It's Ontario and Quebec. High pressure really sitting strong. We could have some cloud cover building in, and we probably will in through Wednesday, Thursday, especially for the southwest corner and the northern parts of the province. A cold front sliding through, so cloud cover building in, but really just a beautiful 7-day forecast working its way through. Low pressure stateside will start to affect southern parts of the prairies in through the week, and the accumulation of rain is definitely there, as well as that low pressure just moving its way over the Rockies, adding into the instability. Wet midweek for the prairies, and temperatures cooling off as well to seasonal, but might feel way cooler than you'd expect, but it's actually seasonal. We've had a pretty hot one in through the prairies. Now it's not going to be hot in through higher elevation areas. Jasper, Lake Louise, Banff included in this. You could even get some snowfall. And this time of year, well, I wouldn't even rule out a flurry for areas like Edmonton and Calgary. That's totally normal for the prairies, right? If you don't like the weather, they say just wait a couple of minutes and it'll change completely. Well, this is a look at BC as well, and totally a split screen weather forecast. To the north, we are seeing quite a lot of instability move in, even Williams Lake getting into that. Whistler could get some, and of course the North Shores, but to the south, the Okanagan Valley, the Kootenays, no measurable precipitation really. Well, as your week starts, we would love to see what you're up to. This is where you can find me, and don't rule out theweathernetwork.com. Some great information about how Hurricane Irma has been moving in through Florida, and we will continue to catch you up with all of that coverage when we come back. But wherever you are, here's your local forecast now.